Hey everybody, it's Jason Blaha here, and once again it is time for the Q&As, and I have a dozen or so questions for you guys. I'm going to split this up in two parts so I can get this up quicker. So let's get this party started. First question. What do you think about fenugreek for increasing T? Any truth to it or just bullshit? If true, how can we use it for the gains? Thanks. Alright, brother, fenugreek is an herb. For those who don't know, this is an herb that grows over in India and certain parts of the Middle East. It is used by a couple different cultures, not just one. I believe it's used in several different countries and cultures as a supposed aphrodisiac and testosterone booster and some other various things that people use it for. It has actually been studied quite a bit because its use is widespread enough that researchers have actually taken an interest in it. It does do some things, but not necessarily what most of you guys are going to be interested in. In fact, I might recommend men not take it at all things considered. It does seem to affect one sex hormone, and that is prolactin. So taking this herb has been found to affect prolactin in a way that breastfeeding females, it can up to double their milk production. We don't know if there's any other side effects with that they need to be aware of, but it does seem to increase milk production in women who are breastfeeding. Now, for men, it doesn't seem to do much useful. There's some different things they've looked at as far as maybe reducing DHT, but you guys who are lifting weights and not using any drugs, I'm going to recommend that you not mess with your DHT levels. It's not ideal for your training. As far as testosterone goes, though, there have been several studies done, and there's no consistent data showing any increase in testosterone. So unfortunately for you guys, you're not going to get a boost there. Now, what I will point out, though, with testosterone boosters, don't assume that even if something does later come out with a small boost in testosterone, that is automatically going to equal more gains in the gym. Because if you find an herb or a supplement that, say, boosts your testosterone production 10%, that is not going to equal actual gains in the gym. That is unlikely to give you any measurable increase in muscle mass. It's just not enough to make a real difference. So keep that in mind. But in the case of this one, I think they had one study that showed a minor increase in some of the people, and the other studies didn't show anything. So we've got to call this one no bueno. All right, next question. Hey Jason, a while ago you mentioned that a 3-plate deadlift and a 2-plate squat were all that one needed to reap the health benefits of training. What would you say are some good numbers to shoot for pressing and pulling movements, bench, chin-up, overhead press, etc., for strictly the health benefits? All right, great question. And when we're talking about the health benefits of lifting weights, these are the reasons that I tell people that everyone needs to lift weights. We're not talking about just getting your gains. We're talking about the stuff that's going to improve your quality of life through the rest of your life. We're talking about the positive impacts on blood sugar, bone density, just overall blood work and health markers. So we know that lifting weights reduces cancer rates. We know it reduces osteoporosis rates. We know it lowers rates of heart attacks, of strokes, and of diabetes. These are all medically proven benefits to lifting weights. So what am I going to say? Where are you going to max out most of your health benefits on some of these upper body stuff? Well, remember, the upper body stuff isn't going to do as much for you. It is the big lower body movements that are going to give you the health benefits because they work the most muscles. And so anything that's full body is going to give you the most health benefits. You're trying to just increase your body's overall insulin sensitivity and bone density and things. But you can use the same sort of idea. Someone can bench press 1 plate aside for reps, or they can do a few chin-ups. If they can do 3 or 4 body weight chin-ups and bench press 1 plate aside for several reps, their upper body is probably strong enough to glean all of those health benefits that we discussed. And probably anything beyond that is just for putting on exercise and strength. You're not gaining a lot of the health benefits at that point, really, but not to any measurable degree. You could gain more, but it becomes an issue of, are they factored in with the higher risk rate of pushing heavier weight for most of your life? I mean, we could argue these things all day long. No point in even trying to. It's a waste of time. But there are, of course, benefits to being stronger that always need to be factored in, mainly just the ability to be more useful. Strength is useful to have in many different real world situations, everything from day-to-day situations to survival type situations. So strength is not a bad thing. I don't want people to say that you should just stop at those weights and not lift any further. There's no benefit. There are benefits to having strength and muscle. Now, particularly the extra muscle from being stronger than that could lower the rates of things like diabetes slightly further, or cancer slightly further, but it's not going to be by a large magnitude. You've already got like 95% of the benefits you're going to get there by getting to that point. So you're talking very small amounts after that for the extra muscle mass. Because a lot of the health benefits that you get from lifting isn't just about the muscle mass that you put on, but what happens with the quality of the muscle mass you have as far as nutrient partitioning. And that's where a lot of the health benefits come from lifting weights that are going to help you live longer and avoid a lot of the chronic diseases that the rest of the population suffers from. So again, no need to worry that much about the purely upper body stuff, but if you wanted to keep them in ratio with those lower body lifts or full body movements, that's what I would shoot for. All right, next question. Do you think it's possible to gain a ton of muscle without progressing on all of your lifts if you're on a large amount of gear? Well, in this case, it's not a case of what I think or what you think or what anyone else thinks. There's hard data on this. We have research showing that guys who have been lifting weights for a year, who stop lifting weights completely, stop training, do no intense exercise, who are given medical grade testosterone by researchers and put in a lab, that they gain enormous amounts of muscle. In fact, they gain more muscle per month than guys who are lifting weights still as a control, even after you take them off of weights. So that's the simple reality of hefty doses of anabolics or testosterone. The studies prove that people can not only fail to progress, they can just stop lifting weights for 5 months straight. And again, I want that point to be clear. These are guys who, when we studied it, gained 15, 16, 18 pounds of muscle mass with DEXA scans involved to make sure it's not just water retention. When they stop lifting weights and go on gear for the first time, they can just quit lifting weights completely and make gains. Is that fair? No. Is it something that everyone in the gear world wants to admit? No, but the truth is, once people go on drugs, and particularly hefty amounts of drugs, their drug stack is probably more important than their training for how much muscle they gain. That is just a simple reality, and anyone who is in denial of that fact hasn't looked at the data and the science, and you can absolutely disprove whatever preconceived notions they have. These substances have been medically proven to put large amounts of muscle mass on people who just completely stop lifting. Proven fact, not even subject to debate. All right, next question. Can too much stress slow down gains even if everything else is on point? Let's say someone gets enough sleep, has a good diet, and follows a good training program, but has a lot of stress due to work, relationships, etc. Would he have slower gains than if he was stress-free, or as long as sleep, diet, and training is on point, it won't make a significant difference? Okay, to answer this one, absolutely. Stress can absolutely, unequivocally reduce your progress in the gym. In fact, enough stress, even if you think everything is on point, can actually reverse some of your progress. If you get stressed enough, you can actually lose muscle mass and strength in the gym. And as far as the other stuff being on point, as far as sleep, nutrition, everything else, what you're actually going to find is that if you get stressed enough, it will interfere with your sleep. It will interfere sometimes with your diet, interfere with your healthy eating and eating a well-balanced diet. Some people won't eat enough. They'll lose weight, lose muscle even, because they won't eat when they're really stressed. And other people will tend to binge eat a lot more when they're really stressed, so they're going to gain more fat, maybe eat more junk food. So the problem there is that you can get hit with a double whammy. The stress and the extra cortisol and stress hormones, when you're going through a lot of stuff in your personal or professional life, can not only reduce or even in the worst case, reverse some of your gains, which I know that really sucks, but that's life sometimes. It happens to all of us, man. All of us are going to go through something bad sooner or later to where this is going to be a problem. But so not only the direct impact, but the stress itself can actually mess with the other things. And once it starts messing with your sleep, and you're eating on top of the elevated stress levels, yeah, your progress in the gym is going to absolutely suffer, stagnate, and even reverse, because you can get hit with a double whammy because the stress will mess with those other things sometimes. So my advice to you, and this is what I do personally, some people are kind of like, you don't always progress in the gym. Sometimes you go through periods of really good progress, and then other times you seem to stagnate. And that's because I know from lifting over the years, I'm 39 years old. My birthday's coming up in December. One bit of wisdom I have gleaned over the years is that you have to focus on the long game and your long-term goals, and understand that sometimes you have to postpone the short-term goals because of other things going on in your life in order to continue to progress and to do everything that you need to do. And what I recommend, if you are really stressed, if your work is really stressing you, your relationship is stressful, you could be going through a divorce, you could be going through a breakup. I've done this, guys. I've gone through, since I started YouTube, I have gone through a separation and a divorce. Have I not? I lost muscle mass during that. So the thing that I've learned, though, is that you want to continue to train because the training itself can reduce stress. So you don't want to quit training, but what I recommend to most guys, stop progressing. If you're really stressed with something in your personal life, training too hard and trying to push that limit is going to make the stress worse. It's going to make it unmanageable sometimes, and your body isn't going to recover because you're already being hit with all the stress hormones, and you're not in an ideal place to recover from progression. So you're going to be better in the long term if you go ahead and just coast. Don't try to increase the weight, don't try to increase the workload, maybe even reduce the workload slightly, and just come in and get your workouts done so that you feel better and you can relieve some stress, and you can worry about making progress again once your life is back in order. And that way you're not going to end up overtraining, you're not going to end up hurting yourself, and you're not going to end up running yourself into the ground, which should be your concerns, because stress is a killer. That's the thing that people need to remember. Stress isn't a minor thing. We used to think, oh, stress is just stress, but we've known for over 20 years now, based on the research, stress will kill you. Stress will put you in the grave early. So it's important that you maintain your training, though, in order to mitigate that stress, because for most of us who lift, we use it as a stress relieving tool, and you don't want to lose that. But you also don't want to try to progress when you're going through that, because it's just going to end up burying you if you can't recover from it. All right, next question. The book Practical Programming for Strength Training discusses that the stress recovery adaptation period for intermediate and advanced lifters takes more time than it does for a novice. Does this mean adding accessory exercises for muscle mass to a strength program like the Texas Method or STAR Method should be more split and not full body, since progressive overload can only be achieved in weekly cycles? Or can metabolic fatigue still be achieved each workout 3 times a week? No, metabolic fatigue can absolutely be increased 3 times a week just through the training itself, so that's not the problem. Don't worry about that. You're going to be able to achieve that with the workloads in general. Now, you'll find on some of those intermediate and advanced methods, they don't have you lifting really heavy all 3 days. You're going to find, like when you look at Bill Starr's program, you actually definitely have a light day in there. So that already covers that. As far as the peripheral nervous system and the recovery of all of that, that's already built into the program, because you're really only lifting heavy or 2 out of your 3 days for the most part on a lot of these more advanced programs. So you're good to go there already. You don't need to worry about that aspect. And by training 3 days a week, you are still getting the metabolic fatigue, and you're also getting motor unit learning. Meaning, if you come in and you say bench press, if you bench press 3 days a week and one of them is a lot lighter than the others, you're still training the motor patterns. You're still training the movement of the barbell. Even though it's a lighter weight, not light enough for you to feel like you're stimulating new growth, you are still stimulating motor patterns and technique. Just like throwing a baseball every single day is going to make you better at throwing a baseball. It's not because you get stronger at it always. It's because you're practicing the movement. And the same can be said for a lot of these other lifts. You aren't lifting hard enough to just get stronger through the nervous system and recruiting more motor units, but you are inducing a little metabolic fatigue that you might grow from. You're also training the motor patterns, and that's the important thing to remember there also with higher frequency training. It's not just about the individual growth. It's about training the movement so that you stay good at them and you continue to get better at doing that actual movement and exercise, because practice makes perfect. All right, next question. I work a 12-hour day and get an average of 6 hours sleep a night. Your novice 5x5 is pretty tough to recover from. What modifications do you recommend? Would a push-pull split be less taxing? All right, this is always going to be a problem with the novice 5x5. I've always said that people need to be healthy and have a really good lifestyle in order to make the program work. Someone who's working 12-hour days and sleeping 6 hours a night is not in an ideal recovery situation. So what I used to recommend in the past is that people who struggle with recovery from it due to different factors like that should run the cutting version. However, what I changed later, I realized that a lot of people need a completely different program due to that. So people whose lifestyle doesn't facilitate full recovery of the novice 5x5, I actually wrote a program called my linear hypertrophy program. You can find it in the programs playlist. And for you with a setup like that with your sleep and work schedule, I'm going to recommend that you run the linear hypertrophy program and just go ahead and abandon my 5x5. Things are going to go a lot better for you if you do that. All right, guys, but that's really all I have to say on that today. I hope it's been informative, and I will talk to you guys next time in part 2. Hey, everybody, it's Jason Blaha here, and it's time for part 2 of the Q&A, so let's go ahead and finish this up. First question. Hi, Jason. In all the history of the Olympic Games, always the superpower nations win more medals than the others. Now USA is leading, and after them China, and they are first and second, more economic, powerful countries. So they win more gold medals because they have more money to invest in training and stronger drugs. What's the reason behind this? All right, this is multifold in nature. It's a great question. More money absolutely makes a big difference, but it has to do with, like you said, it has to do with better drugs because they have more money to throw into doping programs. That is going to be a factor, absolutely, because if you can throw $500 million into a doping program, you can absolutely beat Olympic testing, absolutely, hands down. Now, there's more to it than that, though. That's just one element of it, because again, without the genetics and without the training, all the drugs in the world won't matter. The United States, China, and even Russia are both very massive countries with a large land mass and a very large genetic diversity. If you have, like say the United States, we have 316 million people to draw from. We have virtually every culture on earth has immigrated here. Therefore, we've got a wide variety of genetics to draw from. So it's more likely that we're going to get the genetic combination of people who have the traits you want for a sport, right? So you have more of them there who are more likely to want to compete in that sport. Because again, you have more people, so therefore more people who want to compete, therefore a larger selection of genes to draw from. You're more likely to get the genetic combinations that you want to produce champions for that specific endeavor. So you have that component, and then the more money is also going to equal access to better food, better researchers, better coaches, because you can, if you've got the money, you can sometimes take the best coach from another country, hire them and get them to defect and come over to your country to coach your athletes, which is something a lot of these countries have done, the wealthier countries. We've taken smaller countries that have a really good coach and we import them. So there's a multifaceted reason why. It's largely due to money, but it's also largely due to population and population diversity as well. So that's the combination of things that gives us so many champions in these larger countries. So your answer was partially correct, but there's more to it than that. All right, next question. I suffer low blood sugar sometimes, and it's quite a nuisance. My doctor has told me to eat more food, which I'm not sure is great advice as I'm 290 pounds. I'm eating more complex carbs, more high fiber foods, fiber pills, which has improved the issue, but it's not cleared up completely. I'm also wanting to lose more weight, which makes the issue even harder to manage. Have you ever come across this issue or have any advice? The doctor also confirms that I'm not diabetic and have no signs of becoming one anytime soon. Also, I'm 34. All right, first of all, yeah, you're going to have to lose more weight. Being the 290 pounds is contributing to some hypoglycemia, absolutely. The other thing is going to be if you are trying to lose weight and you suffer from low blood sugar, again, something I go through myself, my Meniere's disease, because it messes with cortisol quite a bit. I've definitely had some hypoglycemic issues over the years as a result of my other medical condition. So for me, I find that when I'm going through phases like that, I can't eat anything that's really high sugar at all. meaning not just treats and stuff, but I mean even fruit. If I eat too much fruit, it will mess with my blood sugar over the next few hours after I eat it. So what I'm going to recommend to you, stick with purely starches that are high in fiber. And that's what you're going to have to do. Start cutting back dietary fat a little bit and focus more on the high fiber foods, not just a focus on them, but exclusively other than your protein sources. And that will help stabilize it a lot more. Basically, if every single thing that you eat is either protein or a high fiber carbohydrate source, then that should help stabilize it. And you're going to have to just avoid the stuff that is processed. And you're going to have to avoid even fruit to some extent if you want to keep it stable. And I know the fruit thing is going to piss off some people. There are going to be a lot of people who aren't going to like that. But in my personal experience, having dealt with this myself, particularly for weight loss and the hypoglycemia, fruit is going to have to come out for you personally. I'm not saying it's a problem for everyone, but for someone describing what you are, that's going to have to go. Just stick with the higher fiber starches for now until you lose more weight and this issue stabilizes. All right, next question. My overhead press max is 65 kilos, whereas my max bench is 72 kilograms. It seems this ratio is strange since my overhead pressing more than people who bench a lot more than me. My form is on point. I've had it checked by a coach. Is it possible to be naturally weak at a particular lift because of muscle insertions, bone length, leverage, etc.? Or would this just come down to programming? I would say that if you're a good overhead presser, you're not genetically weak in any way at the bench press. What you're having happen is that either you're training the overhead press more, your programming is causing it, thus causing you to get stronger at it, or you're just naturally gifted as an overhead presser. Maybe you just have strong delts genetically, naturally, and that just is what it is. But you know what? What you're describing isn't a bad thing. Most guys who can overhead press a lot are going to tend to have, they're going to be more fit in terms of functional strength. They're going to tend to look a little more aesthetic because they're going to have wider shoulders. And over time, your overhead press will carry over to your bench. So the fact that you've gotten really good at the overhead press, because it sounds like you're probably still a somewhat novice lifter with a 72 kilo bench, but if you're doing a 65 kilo overhead press already, that's pretty impressive for that strength range. So over time, your delts are just going to grow and get stronger, and so are your triceps, and that's going to carry over to a bigger bench. And over time, that is going to help you grow your chest and just improve your bench press. So you're not in a bad place. It's not something you should feel bad about. If anything, it means that you have more balanced and more functional strength than the guys you know who can bench a lot more than you. And over time, because you've got that secondary exercise, the overhead press, carries over so well to the bench press that over time you're going to pass them probably. You just got to continue to put in the work and the training, and you're going to get there. So what you're doing is, there's nothing wrong. It's nothing to be ashamed of. In fact, we should all be so lucky to be able to overhead press a large amount in ratio to our bench press. It's actually, again, from a functional perspective, that's a good situation to be in. So don't feel bad about it. You just keep doing what you're doing. And if you want to get stronger on the bench now, put a little more focus on the bench. All right, next question. My last set of dips was in the beginning of January, and I didn't finish it because I started to feel pain in my sternum. Since that day, it still hurts. Sometimes I take a deep breath, stretch my chest, or try to do push-ups. I feel this big pain around my sternum area. I don't feel any pain if I do overhead press or bench press. Do you have any advice? Yeah, that sucks. That's not a good situation to be in. It's like I tell a lot of guys, the dip is an amazing exercise. It is probably one of the best exercises you can do. However, a segment of the population structurally cannot do it without a high risk of injury, which kind of makes that bad, because otherwise it's such a fantastic movement. But yeah, you're one of those people who injures your sternum easily. What you've done is you've like cracked a piece of the cartilage in your sternum. So you've actually snapped that cartilage, and it's going to take a long time to heal. What you're going to have to do, any exercise that causes any pain, any stretching that causes any pain there, you're going to have to completely quit doing that for months, because every time you stretch something and it hurts there again, you're re-tearing that cartilage. So you're re-injuring yourself. What I would also recommend that you do, if it's been hurting for that long, you're going to need to see a specialist. You're going to go need to see a physical therapist about it. and to get their advice, because if it's been hurt for that long, I'm probably not going to be able to help you here. You're going to need an actual professional and expert in that field, so go talk to them. But definitely I'm going to say that anything that causes any pain there, you're going to have to quit doing completely, or it's never going to heal. All right, next question. Strength training for children 10 years of age plus, does it actually inhibit growth and hurt joints? Is it a bad thing under the guise of a good coach with challenging weights that are not excessively heavy? All right, I decided to answer this one. I've answered this one in Q&As at least 5 or 6 times now. In fact, I know I've answered this question in the last month in a Q&A. So, but people keep asking it, so I guess people aren't hearing the answer. So let me just give you the brief synopsis again, and you can go search my channel for further information. No, the risk of slipping an epheseal plate and stunting growth is low as long as weights are kept moderately heavy and not very heavy, meaning maybe 50% of their projected max. Like if you think a child is capable of lifting 30 kilograms on an exercise as their max, stick with 15. But they do need to focus on technique, form, and a good coach. Now, I'm also going to say what happens with children, their form gets sloppy if they don't like doing this. If they're just in there flopping around and not having fun and not enjoying this activity, and you're forcing them to do it instead of them saying, hey, I want to do this, then they're more likely to use bad form and they're more likely to get hurt. If they're doing it because they actually enjoy it, maybe they see mom or dad doing it and they just want to participate, then even at 10 or 12 years old, that can be a good thing as long as they're not being forced to do it. Because again, the way children rebel sometimes when they don't want to do something, they're going to do it wrong on purpose. And by doing it wrong, that's how you risk the injuries and the problems. So as long as they're enthusiastic and they have good technique and form, it should be fine. But remember, good form is relative. The good form that we talk about isn't the same as you see on YouTube all the time. Most YouTubers I see out there use form that will injure your children. So, don't be imitating Jeff Side and Nick Wright or any of these ignoramuses who really have no idea what they're doing, or you're going to damage your children for the rest of their life. All right, next question. And this is the last question of the week in the main segment. I may do a Gear Talk Q&A after this. Do you think natural lifters don't get enough praise for what they achieve? Guys on gear seem to get a lot of admiration and followers where natural guys don't. Do you think it's because people don't have a good understanding of what standards to expect in natty guys? I don't have anything against guys taking steroids, but I think it's dangerous for new lifters to admire YouTubers or the guys in the gym who are clearly getting assistance from drugs. Well, let's just be honest here. It's because most guys who claim to be natty are on drugs. Anyone who has a following, whether it's in powerlifting or natural bodybuilding or physique modeling or anything you see on the internet, the odds that they are either using drugs or that they are using Photoshop to enhance their look, or something is going on to where they aren't presenting a real reality of a drug-free lifter, has skewed everything to the point to where people actually think drug results are natural results. And so when you have that standard set that the guys who proclaim to be drug-free and natural are in fact using drugs, then yeah, natural standards aren't understood anymore. And because it's so widespread and they have so many followers, I mean, you have guys who are clearly fake natties who have 1 million plus followers online. And that's what they're promoting as doable natural. If you just train really hard and perfect and have great nutrition, that can be done when they're actually on drugs. And so the problem there is that you will never ever have a realistic standard again in our society for a drug-free lifter. So it's unfortunate, but that is the nature of it, because all the standards of being impressed, even being impressed for a natural, so-called natural, have been set by people on drugs. That's it. A truly natural person can never compete with those standards again. So what I would recommend is, remember this: since it is that way, if you plan on staying natural, and there's nothing wrong with that, if you choose to stay natural, that's fantastic. Again, I don't recommend that most people ever go on drugs in general. There are good reasons to go on drugs, but to impress other people is not one of them. I would never ever advocate using drugs just to impress other people. That's a really, really bad idea. So that being said, just accept the fact that you're not going to impress people and don't worry about it. Train for yourself, train for your own fitness, train for your own goals, and don't worry about it. That's the best that you can do, and there's nothing wrong with that. You're improving yourself as a person if you do that. That's fantastic. keep doing it. All right, guys, but that's really all I have to say on that today. I hope it's been informative, and I will talk to you guys next time.